This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. If you click on the link in the description below, it'll take you to their store and they'll know I sent you there. Hello everyone, I'm Nitzahone, and it is Wednesday, so that means it's time for another MTG Top 10. This is a series where I rank cards based on their historical performance at Magic's highest level of competition. This time around, I'm looking at charms. I chose to look at charms today because a few months ago I looked at the broader topic of modal cards, and there were only 2 charms on the list, and many people said they wanted to see where all the charms from the history of the game ranked, so here we are. So, what is a charm? Charms are a specific kind of modal card in Magic. They are all instants that give you 3 choices. They generally don't do what they do at the most efficient rate, but the flexibility they have tends to make up for that. A charm is going to be able to do something on the vast majority of board states thanks to all the options. Charms officially debuted way back in Mirage, like Chaos Charm here, and since then we have seen dozens more. In all, there are now 50 charms in the game. And in this video, we'll talk about the 10 that have made the biggest impact on competitive Magic. Before we get started, a quick reminder on how I score cards in these videos. A Pro Tour, Players Tour, or Mythic Championship Top 8, as well as a Legacy or Vintage Championship Top 8 is worth 2 points, and a Grand Prix or Magic Fest Top 8 is worth 1 point. Alright, let's get to number 10. At number 10, it's JESKAI Charm. Every one of the Khans from Tarkir has a charm, and that's a theme we will continue to see. Specific factions made up of 2 or 3 colors frequently get their own charms, like this one. JESKAI Charm gives you a lot of nice options. Time ebbing a creature is great when your opponent has a problem creature in play, or if you want to make sure your opponent doesn't draw something else on their next turn. Doing 4 to your opponent is good when it's lethal, and pumping your whole team and giving it lifelink is nice when it can either result in lethal damage to your opponent, or help you stay alive long enough to win the game, and so on. JESKAI Charm got all of its points in Standard, where it was played in JESKAI mid-range decks. At number 9, it's RAKDOS Charm, a charm for the Black-Red Guild of Ravnica. While many charms are main deck Swiss Army knives, that isn't really the case for RAKDOS Charm, which has 3 effects that can actually be useless against large portions of the field. However, as a sideboard card, it is pretty great that it can hit on graveyards, artifacts, and go wide decks, all while only taking up 1 slot in that sideboard. It was not played a ton in Standard or Block, and instead it has really caught on in Modern, where a huge number of playable decks exist, including decks that can be hated on by any of the 3 modes of RAKDOS Charm. The same is true in Vintage, where RAKDOS Charm has managed 4 points in the sideboard of control decks. At number 8, it's SELESNYA Charm, another Ravnica charm, and another charm that does a great job of showcasing how good flexibility can be. None of its modes are impressive. 2 mana for +2/+2 and Trample is really just an okay trick. Only being able to exile big creatures is pretty narrow, and a 2 mana 2/2 with Flash and Vigilance is also really just okay. But because you have all 3 options to choose from, you can choose whatever is most effective. SELESNYA Charm's inefficiency doesn't really matter. The charm was primarily played in Selesnya aggro decks while it was in Standard. At number 7, it's Emerald Charm, the only monocolored charm to make the list. This little charm only costs a single mana, and it gives you the ability to untap a permanent, or destroy what used to be called a global enchantment. Today, we would say non-aura enchantment, or it can also take flying away from a creature. All pretty narrow effects, but they all have their place. The enchantment destruction effect was the one that was the most frequently chosen. In Block, it was played in Bloom Drain combo decks, with 1 copy in the main deck and 1 in the sideboard. It was the most effective in the mirror, since the deck was reliant on squandered resources and Cadaverous Bloom, and the charm could deal with those pretty efficiently. It was also played in the sideboard of Standard decks to be brought in against recurring survival decks. Another deck reliant on 2 enchantments, in this case Survival of the Fittest and Recurring Nightmare. In Extended, it was also useful against powerful enchantments like Oath of Druids and Necropotence. It hasn't been played anywhere since 2001, but it does have a pretty secure spot on this list as a result of its multi-format success between 1997 and 2001. At number 6, it's Jund Charm, the only Alara charm to make the list. Jund Charm can hate on graveyards, pyroclasm the board, or make one of your creatures bigger. Again, it doesn't do any of those things very efficiently, but its multiple uses make it a good card. While it is played in sideboards a lot and brought in against opponents that are especially devastated by pyroclasm and or exiling the graveyard, it is played in the main deck about half the time. In Standard and Modern, it was played in Jund mid-range decks. In Modern, it has also been featured in the sideboard of Living In decks. It also has a single Pro Tour top 8 from Extended in 2010, where it was played in a Jund deck. Jund Charm doesn't have any points since 2016, but it also doesn't really have any cards behind it that are all that active, so it will probably stick around at number 6 going forward. At number 5, we return to Ravnica with IZZET Charm. IZZET Charm has some pretty attractive modes that make it so that it is likely to be useful no matter the board state. It can be a bad Spell Pierce, Shock, or Faithless Looting. But all three of those cards are quite powerful and have seen considerable play at Magic's highest level, so even if it doesn't quite do what they do, it's a close approximation, and you have all three options on a single card. In Block and Standard, it was featured primarily in JESKAI Control and mid-range decks. It has been the most prolific in Modern, where it has been regularly played since being printed in 2013. At first, it was played in combo decks like Splinter Twin and Scapeshift, where it had nice utility all game long, but could also be used to protect the combo in both decks with the counterspell option. More recently, it's been used by graveyard decks, with the looting mode being the best for them. This includes decks like Grishelbrand and IZZET Phoenix. It also has a single point in Legacy Reanimator. The options that IZZET Charm gives you are even good enough to see play in Vintage, where it's been played in Oath of Druids decks. It doesn't have any points in Pioneer yet, but it is being played there, and is likely to gain some points from the format going forward. At number 4, it is Golgari Charm. This is a charm that is more in the mold of RAKDOS Charm. It has effects that are nice to have in your sideboard, but that won't always be useful in your main deck. Regenerating your creatures can be nice against board sweepers, destroying enchantments can be nice against, well, enchantments, and the -1/-1 effect is nice against aggro decks. So yeah, it is pretty nice value to have a card that can hate on enchantments and weenie decks in your sideboard, and have it take up only a single slot. Many black-green decks in Standard, Modern, and Legacy have tended to run the charm in the sideboard for that reason. It's also being played in Pioneer, but like IZZET Charm, it doesn't have any points in the format just yet. At number 3, we have Boros Charm, our third consecutive Ravnica charm. Boros Charm can do damage to your opponent's face, make all your permanents indestructible, or give a creature double strike until end of turn. This is certainly an aggressive charm. The 4 damage and double strike modes are really all about doing as much damage as possible, and the indestructibility mode saves your board from most board sweepers. To be fair, the mode most frequently used on Boros Charm is the 4 damage to the opponent option. Boros Charm has largely been played in Burn or Boros Deck Wins decks in both Standard and Modern, but how many of your burn spells have extra utility that you can cash in if a corner case shows up where, say, making your board indestructible is useful? It's going to continue to gain points, and it'll be interesting to see if it can ever catch the top 2 cards on this list. At number 2, it's our 4th consecutive Ravnica charm, this time AZORIUS Charm. While Boros Charm is all about aggression, AZORIUS Charm is more about tempo. It can time ebb attacking creatures, draw you a card, or give your whole board lifelink. These modes were pretty attractive for control decks in both Block and Standard, both formats where it was heavily played. However, unlike a lot of charms on this list, for a long time, it didn't have any multi-format success, and before 2020, it had not gained a single point since 2014. However, with the recent creation of the Pioneer format, a format that has a viable blue-white control deck, AZORIUS Charm has started adding to its score again. So, while Boros Charm isn't all that far behind, the AZORIUS Charm may hold on to the number 2 spot, assuming its fortunes in Pioneer continue. And at number 1, it's ABZAN Charm, which, like JESKAI Charm, is a Tarkir charm. ABZAN Charm can let you exile larger creatures, draw you a couple cards, or put a couple of +1/+1 counters on your creatures. So yeah, you won't always have a target to exile, and you won't always have creatures who want +1/+1 counters. When you can do either of those, though, it will feel pretty good. When you can't utilize those modes, it also comes with a fairly broad ability, the one that draws you cards. This means ABZAN Charm will pretty much always be useful, and that's a good hallmark of a good charm. ABZAN Charm was mostly played in Standard ABZAN decks, which it helped make into the most dominant deck of that Standard format. It also has a single point in Modern from back in 2015. Despite its impressive score, it has been idle now since 2016, and cards like AZORIUS Charm and Boros Charm will both have a real shot at passing it if they continue to see play and ABZAN Charm stays at 81 points. Well, that does it for this MTG Top 10. It looks like, overall, the Ravnica charms have a claim to being the best collectively, since 6 of them made the list. Meanwhile, there's 1 Alara charm, 2 Tarkir charms, and 1 of the old school Mirage charms that made this list too. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and share it so that others can enjoy it too. If you want to make sure you catch future MTG top 10s, don't forget to subscribe, and if you want to catch up on the ones I've already done, you should see the playlist on your screen now. Thanks for watching.